Hello, welcome to my daily watercolor practice series. In these videos, every day of the week, I'd focus on different technique, different skill to build to improve painting in watercolor. They are very easy. They're just kind of there to get you going. So I want to encourage you to join me because we're mostly doing like swatches and things. We're covering different topics. For example, yesterday I did value scales, the day before was composition. It's all kind of very, very simple, but also quite useful. At least that's what I found for myself. Today I will be focusing on, it's Monday. Last week we did wet in wet. Today I will be doing practicing wet on dry techniques. So just quickly to recap, wet on dry is where we use the paper is dry and you use wet paint to paint but the paper can be either, there can already be a layer of paint on it. For example, you can do layering with it, but the rule is that it just needs to be dry. So whether it's just plain white paper or already something painted on it, it just needs to be dry. That's when we will call it wet on dry. So I think the useful way to think about how to practice wet on dry is, for me, I was thinking, for example, where I would use it, and like what kind of like qualities it has, I guess. So the first exercise I'm gonna do is layering or glazing, really. So I will just do some stripes. So when glazing is basically when you want you layer one color over another, and you want that that color to show through. So for example, I'm going to use my yellows. I'll do a layer of yellows and then a layer of blues, and then when blues and yellows mix, in theory they should create green. So let's just get started. Which way should I go with yellows? Shall I just go horizontally with yellows? Doesn't really matter. So I'm literally just going to use my different yellows. Doesn't really have to be super even, but it actually would help if it's fairly strong so that the blue shows through. So I will literally do lines with my yellows and then I layer over with blues. Now, whether the color will show through, a big part of it depends on how transparent they are. So for example, if I layer on top of yellow, I put like blue that's opaque, that's kind of not see-through, then the green will not, or like the yellow will not show through as well, and it might not create green. But let's just do this and then we can see what happens. Okay, so that's the only yellows I have. I could use gold ochre as well. Okay, let's just do gold ochre as well, just to kind of finish the page. You can do it with other colors, anything really that you want to test. It's just very simple to do, something to just get you going. You also kind of end up practicing straight lines, brush control, which clearly I need practice on. Right, so I'm going to have to let it dry completely, otherwise I might disturb the layer underneath. While this is drying, I think I might just have to put this down. I lost my clip. This is not gonna work. Maybe this. I lost my clip to hold my paper together. Okay, I just want to make sure this doesn't get messed up. While this is drying, I just want to quickly show you how to check if your paint is transparent or not. For example, on Winsor Newton, there will be this square. Can you see it? So the transparent square, the see-through square, there we go. That's the most transparent paint. Then they have one like this, when it's like stricken through, so that's a little bit less transparent but still very transparent. This one is completely opaque because it's completely black, and the square, and then there is something in between where it's like half black and half transparent, or but I'm not sure. Oh yeah, Cotman doesn't really show it, so it's on the Winsor Newton Professional, for example. You can find it, but not on the Cotman ones, which are like student grade. Not sure if I can find the one that oh, there we go. So yeah, this one is actually, while we're doing this, I may as well find these, because that should then, that way I could literally layer with these ones. Okay, so I want to use cobalt turquoise. I don't have it in my palette, I don't think. This one. Well, we can definitely use, but that's green. I wanted a blue one. That's green. Okay, I'm going to sort it out. I'll pause the video for now. I'll sort some colors out and I'll be back. Right, so now that this layer dried, I will do another layer, this time vertically with my blues. Turns out I don't actually know the transparency of the colors I have in my palette. I mostly actually have Cotmans here, so we're just going to have to see how it goes. Part of whether the color underneath will show is also depends on how kind of thick you mix it. If you do a very thick mix, very dark color, very pigmented, then it will be a little bit more opaque. But just doing this sort of exercise, it can be quite helpful, especially if you have some blues that are similar, but in like similar shade but different transparency. So knowing the transparency can then help you decide which one of these to use. And it's also quite fun exercise to do anyway, just to kind of get you going, not overthink anything really that you do. This is indigo. Should I use indigo? No, I'm going to go for Tailor Blue, just to keep them all blue. So yeah, anything that kind of encourages you to paint, gets you to pick up your brush, even if it's not a masterpiece, it's literally just some silly exercise. I find this really helpful, just kind of to help my mindset when I'm painting. There we go. So basically they all seem to be even the opaque ones. I'm sure there is some opaque ones in here. It's kind of hard really to tell which one is more transparent, which one is more opaque, but basically that's the beauty of watercolors. You can quite often let them shine through. They often kind of shine through each other. It is harder to see the color underneath that's paler, especially because I painted this the yellow, that was lemon yellow. I did a fairly light mix, not very strong one, so it especially kind of gets killed by this Tailor Blue. You can't really see it through, but then with the cerulean blue it still shows through, even though it's quite pale. So yeah, very nice. Okay, let's move on to the next exercise. Now, next thing I want to do, another reason why I would use wet on dry is to add depth to what I'm painting. I just want to paint a little cube. I think I'm just gonna freehand it to show you what I mean. So basically you would add layers to add depth, add kind of darkness. Let's just go with the maybe cadmium yellow. I just need to clean it quite well because I had a lot of blue. Right, so I'm going to create a puddle. I'm not going to change the strength of the paint. It's going to be painted with the same strength, but I don't want it to be too... Oh goodness, I made it a bit dirty. My palette is always dirty. I think I'm gonna have to mop it up. Right, let's try this again. Messy painter. I don't often do wet on dry. I quite often do wet in wet, where you use blending more than like controlled layers. That's part of the reason why I'm so messy, because I'm just kind of used to painting in a messy way, blending things. But that's also the reason why I should be doing sort of exercises, because I'm not that familiar with them. That's why I do them, to get better, to understand things. So messy, honestly. Right, okay, stop fussing. Right, so what I want to do now is paint a little cube with the same wash, same strength. And then I'm just going to layer different sides of the cube. Can I freehand it? I think I can. It might not be perfect, but it's basically kind of to show the idea. So the first layer is the same kind of strength. Right, this doesn't really look that much like a cube, but it will start looking like a cube when I put the other layers on it. Now I need to let this dry. I don't know if I should move on to the next exercise. I think I'm going to move on to the next exercise, because the next thing that I want to do is also like a house. So I'll start on the house. It's kind of like an expansion of this idea, because another thing that you can do with layers, or another quality I guess they have, is they often end with hard edges. Unless you soften them, they'll have a hard edge. With wet, in wet, use blending, and blending naturally creates soft edges. But with wet on dry, because the paint only goes where you put it down, because it doesn't go where there's no water on paper, it's just dry paper. So it's kind of very controlled, and it creates hard edges unless you then add water and soften it. So I'm trying to paint a house here, but again, I'm going to have to wait for both of these to dry, so I'll be back when that happens. Okay, so now that first layer is dry, I could go in with a second layer. It could even be the same strength, it doesn't have to be a darker mix. It can be, but even the same strength will basically darken my painting. So now I'm building depth and like adding this 3D look to this cube, just literally by adding another layer on top. And then once this dries, I will add yet another, and that way it will have this 3D look. Now I'm going to try to do similar thing with the house here. You can also neaten some edges, like for example, have a little bit of a, like it's not straight, so I can kind of try to straighten it up a little bit. But with this one, what I also want to show is how, for example, because they are hard, they create hard edges, you can use them for things like shadow under the roof, like a lip of the roof, if you know what I mean. So I'll have to add the roof as well, but again, I have to wait for them to dry. So again, I'll be back. Okay, now that my layer is dried, I'm going to try to paint a roof on this house. Oh, I already made a bit of a mess. and then I will try to add a shadow underneath. I'm not sure. Oh, yep, I think I didn't really let the layer dry enough. This is not turning out how it was supposed to, but it's basically just to show an idea. Then a little bit here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry, and then I will add another layer to my 3D cube. Just clean this paint, and then for example, I will need to decide where I think the light is coming from. So I say it's kind of like from this direction, maybe like this. So like this is in the shadow. Is it dry? It's almost dry, but I'm going to go in anyway. My paint is a little bit dry as well, so I'm just going to have to re-wet it. I'll try to roughly match the shade. But basically it can be very similar, similar shade, and I just add another layer and it instantly becomes darker and adds this three-dimensional look to it. Not so much, I guess. It's not a huge difference, but obviously depending on how big a difference you want to create, you can add a stronger layer. Now for this one, I think I'm going to have to wait again. Okay, so now, for example, if I wanted to create a sharp shadow under here, using wet and dry is a good technique because I can control that shadow. To do the shadow, I would normally use the opposite color to the one that the shadow will be on. So the yellow opposite to yellow is purple. So I will mix my yellow, which I used cadmium yellow, and I'll add purple to it. And then that will create like a muddy color. Although this one's a little brown. Sometimes when you create mix opposite colors, it's going to do either, the mix will be either brown or gray. So I'm going to add a little bit of indigo to just kind of make it a bit more gray. And I can't find any of my small flat brushes, so I'm just going to use this one, but at an angle, so it's going to be a bit messy. And I think I also made it a little bit too. I need a very, very pale mix, not too strong. I'm just gonna go in. It might not work. It's just to illustrate an idea. Don't know if it will make any sense if I actually do it. Might be a bit too close to the original. Yeah, something like this. Oh, and I made a mess here. Well, this didn't really work very well, but that's kind of the idea and the reason to use. Did I do it too narrow? Should I mess with it? I'm going to mess with it, but with a round brush. So yeah, when I do these exercises, things go wrong, things don't go how I planned. Now I'm completely messing it up. But I think it's important that we kind of allow these mistakes to happen as well. Yeah, I was trying to kind of do a shadow here. It went a little bit wonky, but let's just leave it at that. And the next, another reason to use wet and dry, or like how you can use it, is also to add details. Because when you do details on a subject, it's helpful when you can control where the paint goes. So once this dry, I will do something with some details. I'm back because I just had an idea that I feel like I need to add shadow here as well, because I feel like the light is coming kind of, maybe, oh, I don't know if it was coming this way, because it's like, that's where the shade is. I'm still kind of struggling with it a little bit. But if I have shadow here, do you think this will make it look better, or should I just leave it like that? Because if the light is coming kind of from here, depends at an angle. You know what? I'm just going to do it. It might actually completely mess it up, but hey, let's just see. And I'm just going to mop up this. Did this make it look better? Nope. I don't think so. Looks a bit weird, but okay, I'm just going to leave it because hey, you live and learn. I could also add shadow here. Okay, stop messing. Right, I'll let it dry and leave it alone. Right, so the last thing I want to practice is adding details to my subject. It's going to be something very simple because that house on the other page stressed me out a little bit. So I'm just going to paint a leaf. Just one layer. It's going to be a flat layer. because I'm kind of demonstrating or practicing wet and dry, so I don't want to kind of make it pretty. It's more to illustrate the principle. Okay, leave it. I have to leave it. I have to be back. That's actually, by the way, that's one of the problems with wet and dry, and probably reason why I don't use it as often as wet and wet. You need patience because you need to wait for your layers to dry. If you don't, then things will bleed. Yeah, and I don't have much patience, unfortunately. Something I really need to work on. But yeah, deep breath. I'll leave it alone. I'll let it dry, and then we'll add some detail, some like little veins on the leaf. But I'll have to let it dry first. Okay, so now in this last exercise, I will add details to my leaf. I will actually use the same strength of paint again, just to kind of show that I hope it's dry, kind of. That's one way to check, is if you check with the back of your hand if it's cool to the touch, which this one is. It's not dry yet, but it's nearly dry, so I will just go in. So for example, if you want to add, and this is the same paint, same strength, but it's looking much darker. Now the kind of problem with this technique, it looks controlled, and yeah, I like things loose, so I don't use it often, but it can be, if sometimes you do need to have control in watercolor as well. It definitely would help me if I had more control. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I will link a playlist of other exercises that I did at the end of the video, and I hope you try this. I find these very useful. I do make a lot of mess, a lot of mistakes, so forgive me, but I think it's useful to just, you know, at the end of the day, we learn from mistakes. If I was doing everything perfectly, it would be because I know it already, but I don't. I paint all this also to learn and to get better. And I hope you find them useful, and I hope you actually do try it for yourself. Don't just watch, actually do it for yourself. They are very easy. Anyone can do it. And good luck and happy painting, and see you in the next one, hopefully.